Hello, Little Miss Delta Nell. Right back at you. So this is the longer version of this book by Rachel Ignotofsky, and it's Women in Art. And you'll notice I looked up how to pronounce her name, and then when I was watching a video, I'm like, oh, I know her work. Very cool. And so what I want to do on this one is I'm going to try to read most of the things on each page. And that way you've got the short version, but this can be a little longer if you're in like a need to sit and relax mood and take something in that's a little longer. So women in art. I create beauty. I will show truth. I will build something that lasts. I will tell my story. I will make something new. I will follow my passion. All these artists there. In the introduction, art is more than pretty. It's powerful. And many people think our urge to make art is what makes humans special. Yet through history, women have been left out of the story of humanity's creativity. Over the centuries, women who were often denied formal training, and many had to work under fake male names to sell their art. Still, they kept creating. Even after school and gallery doors started opening for women, racism barred female artists of color from entering. Yet women kept fighting to have their work seen by the world. Art is more than just something beautiful. With every brushstroke, chisel and stone, and line drawn, these women artists use their talent to tell truths, to talk about injustice, and even to heal. Today we celebrate their art and their stories. And the next great artist could be you. Very true. Very cool. Okay. Guan Daoxing is poet and painter from 1262 to 1319. And this is where I'm going to read all the little stuff here. She combined poetry and painting, was one of the most famous female painters in Chinese history, and earned the title Madam of the Wei Kingdom for her art. Very cool. Guan Daoxing was a pioneer in the Chinese art of calligraphy and bamboo ink painting, like we can see in the background. Elizabeth Louise Vigée Lebrun was a painter from 1755 to 1842. She survived the French Revolution. She painted royally throughout Europe and was a member of Paris's Royal Academy. Elizabeth Louise Vigée Lebrun's oil paintings showed the rich and famous of the French royal court. Harriet Powers, a quilter lived from 1837 to 1910. Her quilts show influences from West African designs. Her quilts are in the Smithsonian and the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And Harriet Powers created quilts that told Bible stories and legends that were important to freed slaves. Mary Cassatt was a painter who lived from 1844 to 1926. She supported women's suffrage, which is the right to vote. Was the greatest American impressionist of the 20th century, introduced Parisian artists Degas and Monet to U.S. galleries, and Mary Cassatt became famous for painting the lovely relationships between mothers and children. Very cool. Nampeo was a ceramic artist who lived from 1859 to 1942. Her work was influenced by both her Tiwa and Hopi backgrounds, used symbolism to tell stories on her pottery, helped to introduce the world to indigenous ceramics. Nampeo created a renaissance in Hopi pottery. And Beatrix Potter, someone you're familiar with, author and illustrator, she lived from 1866 to 1943, was one of the most beloved children's book creators of all time, created more than 28 books for children. Her books have sold more than 100 million copies. My. Beatrix Potter wrote and illustrated the beloved children's classic, The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Now here's that timeline that we saw in the short version. 25,000 BCE, archaeologists believe 3/4 of cave paintings were made by women. Women worked alongside men on Grecan pottery in the 300s BCE. And in 1399 CE, Christina de Pizan illuminated manuscripts and poems are considered the earliest feminist art in the Western world. Mary Edmona Lewis was the first internationally acclaimed African-American sculptor. A great biography I read about her. Really an incredible woman, and I've seen a lot of her sculptures around the United States as a result of wanting to learn more about her. Thelma Johnson Street became the first African-American woman to have her work bought by the Museum of Modern Art, titled Rabbit Man in 1941. Bought in 1942. She did the work in 1941. In 1987, the National Museum of Women in the Arts opened in Washington, D.C. And in 2001, painter Frida Kahlo became the first Latina woman featured on a U.S. postage stamp. Now, next great artist could be you. Jenny Paquin was a fashion designer from 1869 to 1936. She designed clothes for both comfort and style. Was the first female designer to be awarded the Legion of Honor. Jeanne Paquin was one of the first major female fashion designers. Georgia O'Keeffe was a painter, 1986, lived from 1887 to 1986, created art for 70 years. Her iconic paintings focused on the attention on nature, was a pioneer of American 20th century art, and Georgia O'Keeffe painted large close-up paintings of flowers and nature. I mentioned in the short version, your great aunt Marla, big fan, and has visited where she lived, stayed there at a retreat nearby, and a lot of museum paintings that she's painted. Augusta Savage was a sculptor and she lived from 1892 to 1962, was an important artist of the Harlem Renaissance, was the first director of the Harlem Community Arts Center, stood up to injustice and racism throughout her career, and Augusta Savage was one of the first sculptors to depict only people of African descent. Dorothea Lange, a photographer who lived from 1895 to 1965, is in the National Women's Hall of Fame. Her photo, Migrant Mother, became a symbol of the Dust Bowl in America. I said the Great Depression earlier, event that occurred in the same period of time. Dorothea Lange captured important moments in American history in her photographs. Black and white photographs are just amazing. Frida Kahlo was a painter. She lived from 1907 to 1954. More than a third of her paintings are self-portraits. Her art explores identity, gender, class, and race, is one of the most famous artists in history, and Frida Kahlo combined Mexican folk art and magical realism in her vibrant paintings. Sippy Pinels was a graphic designer who lived from 1908 to 1991, was the first woman to join the Art Directors Club in New York, hired famous artists like Andy Warhol to illustrate 17, was the art director for Glamour, 17, Charm, and Mademoiselle. Sippy Pinels was the first female art director of Major magazine and a huge influence on people. Now there's all the art tools from paint and palette and easel, paint brushes, colored pencils, ink, a silk screen, camera. We've got clay, ribbon tool, wooden potter's tool, ink, calligraphy pen and nib on the tip of the pen, scissors, knitting needles and yarn, sewing machine, spray glue, spray paint, glue, and an eraser. All different types of things you could make art with. But there's even more things you can do too, huh? Mary Blair, illustrated animator, 1911 to 1978, illustrated many classic golden books for children. Her art influenced many classic movies such as Alice in Wonderland, Cinderella, and Peter Pan. Designed the It's a Small World Disneyland ride, and Mary Blair was an artist for Walt Disney Studios and theme parks. A lot of influence from her. Ray Eames is an industrial designer who lived in 1912 to 1988, co-founded one of the most important design studios in modern history. The Eames lounge chair was called the Chair of the Century. The Eames motto was to make the best for the most for the least. Very cool, and her designs and variations are seen everywhere. Ray Eames designed furniture that defined the style of the 20th century. Elizabeth Catlett was a sculptor and printmaker, lived from 1915 to 2012, was an influential artist in both Mexico and the United States, was honored at the NAACP Image Awards. Elizabeth Catlett created sculptures and art prints that show the struggle and strength of the Black community. Okay. Yayoko Sama was a sculptor and performance artist, born in 1929. She has been called Japan's most important living artist. Considered art to be therapy for her mental health, explores the themes of repetition and infinity in her work. Yayoko Sama has created hundreds of paintings, art exhibits, and clothing items using dots. So that's her style. Pretty cool. Faith Ringgold is a painter and fiber artist born in 1930, fought for greater representation for artists of color and women in New York museums, co-founded a group for Black artists called Where We At, has written and illustrated many children's books. Faith Ringgold combines writing, painting, and fiber arts to create story quilts. And Maya Lin, an architect born in 1959. Her work focuses on history, science, civil rights, and environmentalism. designed the Civil Rights Memorial in Alabama and the Women's Tablet at Yale University, was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. Maya Lin designed the groundbreaking Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., and changed the way memorials were seen around the world. More women of art include Helena of Egypt, late 14th century BCE, ancient Egyptian painter. Mary Edmona Lewis, 1844-1907, marble sculptor, we mentioned earlier. Tarsila D'Armel, 1886-1973, modern art painter. Lola Alvarez Bravo, 1903-1993, a photographer. Amarita Shirgil, 1913-1914, avant-garde painter. Wendy Carlos, 1939, electronic music pioneer. Zaha Hadid, 1950 to 2016, an architect, some cool buildings. Sokar Douglas Camp, 1958, and is a metal sculptor. Throughout history, female artists have created exciting, new, and important works that inspired the world. Many had struggled to get their art seen. Now we can restore these women to their rightful place in art history. Let us honor their legacy by continuing to create. Build what you see in your wildest dreams. Create something new. Share your ideas with the world. And go out there and make your own masterpiece. A great little book. Okay. So with that, it is time for Nux. High five. Low five. Twists and twirls. Love to you, little miss. To the bigs, if they're watching. And to anybody else who checked in and took a watch with us and a learn. Pretty cool book. Women in Art by Rachel Ignotofsky. So really glad to put that in our reading list. All right, that's it for now. Bye-bye. Take care.